It's time to talk Gonzaga basketball.
Get ready.
It's the Spokesman-Review Zags Insiders Podcast.
Here we go.
Here's Jim Meehan and Richard Fox.
Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome back to the Zags Basketball Insiders Podcast. Jim Meehan from the print side, the Spokesman-Review. Richard Fox from the TV side, handles analysis for Gonzaga television broadcast. Interesting week for the Zags this time, Foxy. We had two games on the schedule. Zags beat Arkansas Pine Bluff, as you might expect, handily, 111-71. Then get on a plane, short hour flight to Seattle. Lead for probably 30 plus minutes, play pretty good, but then a little bit of a meltdown that last 9-10 minutes over at Alaska Airlines Arena. Huskies come back and knock off the 7th ranked Zags 78-73. Impact right away, obviously, on the rankings. The AP poll isn't out, but it might be a short 1 week stay for the Zags in the top 10. They will tumble a few spots at least. In the net, it was very interesting. The Zags went from 27 to 33. This morning, they dropped to 35 without playing. Washington rose up quite a bit. I think they gained 6 spots. And now the Zags have a game tonight with Mississippi Valley State. And they're ranked last in the net, literally last, 362.
Probably not going to help. Probably not going to help the net rating.
It's going to cost them probably a couple spots, actually. And then UCONN, Friday night, back in Seattle. A different breed of Huskies from the ones that the Zags just ran into. This is a team that has a national title under their belt from last year, several of the same players from last year, and some great new additions. They're number 4 and a legit contender to repeat, which I can't remember the last time. Maybe Florida, I guess, was the one who did that. The rankings, the net, the AP poll isn't out yet, but the seedings, I think, in the net are probably the biggest things there. And there's so much time left that they're hardly signed, sealed, and delivered in concrete, all that stuff. But you have to remember, Spokane is one of the sites for the opening weekend. And for the Zags to kind of stay in that mix, I think they want to be probably top 3 seed, maybe 4, but I'd say top 3, 2 or 1 would be, almost a stamp to stay at home. But a loss to Washington, no ranked wins on the roster yet on the schedule yet for the Zags. Lots to play for here, especially Friday night, Foxy.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's funny what a week does in your perspective, or at least how you're feeling about things. You look at what Gonzaga's got coming up, and still more opportunities to get a marquee win or two. But as we've talked about, the WCC appears to be as bad as it's been in a long time, and certainly in recent memory. And so you just don't expect it. And obviously, St. Mary's had a good win that we might talk about later against Colorado State on the road, but still, this doesn't appear to be the same WCC we've seen the last few years, where St. Mary's has been exceptional. Teams like Santa Clara, San Francisco are always tough to play against, and BYU was in the league. And obviously, BYU before their exit had not been very good, but previous to that had been a great kind of measuring stick for Gonzaga. So, we could talk about tonight. This is maybe the worst Division I team. Certainly, I'm not sure what you're going to get out of it, other than it might be a get-right game, see the ball go through the hoop a little bit, and they can keep working on some of that depth that I think Mark's touched on as well, trying to get a little deeper on the bench and try to build some confidence on the back end of the roster. But this week's all about Friday.
Yeah, and really, that's, who knows how it plays out, but that's really going to be the one type of game on their schedule, and we'll get to this later, but that, it was like Alabama last year, that win. It was like Kentucky last year when they were number 4 in the country and came here, even though they didn't finish the season that strong. That kind of win is a little different than beating the top 50, top 60 nets, name brand, and top 10 team, defending national champions. That's a whole different level in the eyes of the not only people, the eye test, but I'd say the computers as well. But the Zags were a 2 seed in the last Lunardi rankings for the bracketology, 7th overall. I'm guessing they'll drop a spot or 2 there, probably to the 3 line, possibly the 4 line. And again, that gets back to the Spokane opening weekend of the NCAAs. You want to be in position if you're the Zags to take a bus ride across or van ride across town instead of getting on a plane and going somewhere else. So, well, let's talk about the week that was, Foxy. We had Arkansas Pine Bluff in kind of a midweek special. This was another SWAC team, and I think somewhere in the 340s or 30s in the net. I don't recall a ton about the game other than the size differential and how lopsided it was. But for the main reason I recall it is Jun Suk Yo got a start kind of a little bit out of the blue for Dusty Stromer, who'd obviously come off 2 great games. So it wasn't anything performance related. I think it was an example maybe of Mark wanting to force himself, as he said, I forced myself to leave him in for 5 minutes. And he got to play with the starters, and he got to play when the score was 0-0. So I think all those things were just to, get him some experience, get him some time when the game was just tipping off instead of maybe the last 2 minutes. And he kind of got off to a slow start, didn't do much. In second run maybe of the second half, those last 8-9 minutes, put up 10 points. He ran the floor. He again looked like Rui Hachimura on one breakaway where he, even wearing the same number 21, he went up and I think he finished one on the break and got fouled on another. Kid has some talent and showed some things in that game. I think he can guard a little bit too. But there's that learning curve, not only the language learning curve, but it's U.S. basketball. He's not used to playing U.S. basketball. It's different than what he's probably been playing internationally and on his national teams, those kind of things. So what'd you make of June last week when he got a little bit of extended run?
Well, I mean, look, I've been on this since the beginning of the year. I'm a believer. If you needed him to be a full-time starter and producing for you, I'd be more nervous, but that's not what they need him to do. What I had heard was part of the reason for starting him was also he's a worker. I think he's got a good approach. I think it was a bit of trying to reward the kid, acknowledgement that, we see what you're doing. I love his size. He certainly can guard at that level. He doesn't look out of place at all athletically. That was the case against UW as well. His mistakes are mistakes of effort generally. I can live with that. I think that's stuff you can work with. What's really difficult to overcome are mistakes, because of apathy or, just because of not having a good motor. That's really difficult to cure versus a guy who's really giving you effort, trying to do the right thing and makes those mistakes. You can coach that. It's a lot easier to build around that. So, look, Jim, I think he should be a staple in the rotation. Again, I don't think it's more than 7-8 minutes a game, but he provides them a completely different look. He can guard on the perimeter. That's really where it starts. Is when I'm trying to figure out where I can play you, generally that conversation starts with what can you guard? Where can you defend on the floor? And he can certainly guard on the perimeter, and that provides them with more size up front. And then he hasn't shot the ball well at all this year, but obviously very small sample size. He's shown he's good getting to the rim. But again, we're not looking for him to play 15, 20 minutes a game, but I think he's impactful when he's out there. I thought he was good against UW. His rotations were on point. He, some bad luck, a couple shots that he challenged well went in. So that doesn't look good, but he was in the right spot. So, but with respect to the Arkansas Pine Bluff game, look, it was a complete domination, plus 37 on the glass. Defensively, the field goal percentages are where you want them. You see the ball go in a little bit. Yeah, what's hard about these games, Jim, to me, and I'm not sure it's warrants a longer conversation, but something I keep kind of going back to is, you play these high major teams, and then you play these bottom of the rung teams, and you see a kid like Huff struggle for the most part in against these high majors, and then he comes in and dominates a team like Arkansas Pine Bluff, and then you go to UW and he doesn't do anything. And that roller coaster of what you're playing against is just interesting to me. And from a growth perspective, for particularly the back end of your rotation, I think that's hard. Tonight Huff's going to look like a stud, but we're waiting for that to happen against a high major. Obviously he played well against USC, had a good stretch there, but other than that, it's been difficult for him to get his footing. I'm not sure a game like tonight's going to help him that. Yeah.
The other thing, and we'll move on real quick. The other thing I remember about that game was Luka Krajinovic played quite a bit, did fine. Had a behind the back pass, I believe, from the top of the key to the corner.
He's a brave kid.
That sailed out of bounds. I think Mark Few subbed him out right away. I don't believe, Foxy, Mark Few said a word to him. And I thought, I'm not sure I've seen that either. I would have thought, and in the old days, Mark Few would have, he would have dressed him down a little bit on the way past. I don't think he said a word to him. Did I misread that?
No, I noticed it too, and that's not good.
Yeah, well, it's not good. It's not bad. It's maybe growth on Mark's part too.
As I was told a long time ago, when the coach stops yelling at you, that's when you got a real problem. So
that's a good call.
It's kind of like when your wife stops talking to you, you've really messed up.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah, I think that was good to see Luka play. The challenge he has, and I love his potential, and you see his size, and I think he's got a decent feel. He just can't guard yet. And that's just concerning. And, Gonzaga is despite, how they defended against UW, has been really good on that end of the floor this year. And it's just really glaring when Luka's out there on the floor. You can't keep guys in front.
Yeah. We'll see what the future holds for Luka. But let's move on to that Washington game, one that's kind of sticking the craw of Zag fans, maybe the Zag players and coaches. The way that started, both teams going up and down and scoring at a high rate. I'm kind of sitting there thinking this is 90-85. It has it written it all over it that it's going to be this crazy, wild affair. Turned pretty much the other way. I mean, the offenses really slowed down in the second half. The shooting wasn't nearly as good. The shot selection I didn't think was nearly as good on both teams. They weren't getting the open looks that they got for those first 20, 25 minutes even. But still, the Zags were sitting there on a pace for, I believe, 88 points through 30 minutes. They scored 7 points the last 10 minutes. Some of these numbers were not pretty. Well, let's just start out with that closing stretch. That obviously decided the game. I think the thing that might sting the most for Gonzaga, not only kind of lost their poise, turned it over, did all the things wrong at the offensive end. I think that they played reasonably well defensively there. They got a lot of stops in that whole stretch. 2 and 3 at a time. They got some turnovers. It wasn't like Washington was lighting it up, and kind of the game was there for the taking, even after all those stumbles offensively, and they still couldn't get the offense going in those final 10 minutes.
Yeah, it was just it's something you don't expect from a Gonzaga team, so it just really stands out. And to your point earlier, it's just jarring. You just don't expect to see that. 48 points in the first half, 25 in the second, only 1 assist versus 9 turnovers, 0 of 9 from the 3-point line. Just really careless with the ball. It felt like Gonzaga never got into their second or even third secondary or the third part of their offense. It just come down, quick shot, over dribbling, pick and roll, trying to force the issue. I was looking at it last night. I mean, the lead guards for GU, that's Hickman and Nemhard.
Yeah.
Last 13:57 of the game, 0 points, 5 turnovers, 1 assist, and 0 of 6 from the field. Those guys have the ball the whole game, and you just need them to be more productive. And at times it's felt, and it wasn't like UW was incredibly long, but sometimes it feels like the lack of size that Nemhard has can get him in trouble. And it just felt like he, in particular, was really forcing the issue. Got an offensive foul on trying to post up, I think, Wheeler. Had another offensive foul on the other side of the floor late in the clock, trying to get a shot off. You'd like to see him fall more in love with the simple play and pursue that home run play a little less often, if that makes sense. But look, it's the worst shooting game Gonzaga's had. A second worst shooting game they've had outside of Purdue, 43% from the field, under 28% from three. You don't make shots, you're going to lose most games against quality opponents. I was thinking about it over the weekend. Sometimes it's just not that complicated. You don't take care of the ball, you don't run your offense, and you miss shots, you're probably going to lose. I don't think it was their defense that let them down. It is the first game that they were out rebounded, which I thought was interesting. The big kid from UW, was it Kepnang? Coming into the game, he's averaging 7 and 6, hit 14, 7 and 5 blocks. I mean, career night. And sometimes you need that if you're UW or a team trying to beat a opponent that's ranked in the top 10. You need one of those nights from one of those guys you don't expect, and they got that. So, first true road game. I don't think it's worth overreacting. But I think why it's maybe disconcerting is the opportunities available to you as a program this year are few. That's a UW team that's going to win some games in the Pac-12. That's a high major program, and it's a game you probably should have won, and you kind of let it slip through your fingers, and that's always really, really frustrating.
Yeah, that team, and to be fair, as a writer, or a reporter, you always zero in on the team you're covering. Don't probably give the attention to the opponent when things happen. That team's got some talent, and not marginal talent. I'm talking maybe draftable talent down the road, and guys that they're pretty good players. All Pac-12 kid and Keon Brooks, very nice player. He didn't have an exceptional night, but he scored it. He rebounded it. Severe Wheeler really rode the roller coaster. I thought there were times where I thought he was shooting them out of it, and turnovers, turning them over and shooting them out of it. But at the end, he hit a big three. I think they hit 3 threes in a row when the Zags got up 10 and cut it to 3 in about 2 minutes. And he played well down the stretch. He got the better of it down the stretch. You have to give him credit. And the big kid in the middle, Kepnang, I watched him come out. I'd seen him on TV, and he just looks the part. He's 6'11". He's built. He's, he looks like the guys you watch in the NBA. A lot of those guys in the NBA. And I saw his numbers, and I saw him, going through warmups, and that doesn't match up. He should be far more impactful. And man, was he! And the points were one thing, but I thought those blocks. I really thought Gonzaga had an advantage inside going into that game. Not just with, Graham and the all 4 bigs with Anton and Greg and Huff, but I thought they'd kind of pile it. Last year they had 44 paint points against UW. I thought they'd do that again, maybe even a hair more. I think they finished with 32 or 34, and they had a good run early, so that stopped.
Well, and UW outscored them in the paint +2 for the game.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that was the big kid.
Well, and look, I mean, and they hit some shots. Wheeler at the end of the half, he's not a good 3-point shooter. Hits Watson, great defense, and then you had that crazy layup in the first half.
That was Johnson.
Yeah, you're playing on your home floor, sellout crowd. I didn't look it up, but I'd be willing to bet that's not a common occurrence for the Huskies. All the ingredients were there, and despite all of that, if you're GU, you felt like you gave it away.
Yeah.
And that's just I think that's going to be what kind of sticks in your craw here moving forward for a while. You don't hold on to that feeling very long. You can't afford to. You've got a game against UConn on Friday night that is a tremendous opportunity, but I think that game just left a bad taste in your mouth if you were, if you're on that roster and it's on that staff, or certainly if you're a fan of GU.
Well, we're going to move ahead. Mississippi Valley State tonight. As we mentioned, they're literally the last team in the net at 362, 0-9. I think they score 50 points a game. I make an executive decision. We're going to move ahead to talk to UCONN about UCONN here.
I appreciate that. I co-sign.
Yeah.
I co-sign.
We give them some full airtime here, because that's going to be an interesting game. That team is some of the matchups, man. Klingon, EK, Watson, Caravan. Now that is those are two accomplished guys too. Newton and either Hickman or Nemhard. I'd guess probably Hickman guards him, but maybe vice versa at the other end. They've added some guys. Castle.
Mm-hmm. Castle's a freshman who's been out, but he just played against Arkansas Pine Bluff on Saturday. You've got Solomon Ball, another freshman.
Yeah,
and then
Stewart, Ross,
Johnson. Yeah. It's a deep team. I mean, really, they go 8 deep. But you're right. There's some great matchups, and look, I mean, UConn is really good, and they're about as well positioned to repeat as we've seen in a long time. And part of it, I think, is just the way they play. It's a fun style. They score the ball. They're actually better offensively, at least statistically, than they were last year. Better from the field, better from three. I mean, last year they made 9 3-pointers a game. This year they're making almost 12. They're a better rebounding team, which is interesting given what they lost up front. Klingon is obviously very, very good, but they do a good job on the glass. About 13 offensive rebounds. The one area that they're not as good is defensively, particularly from 3. But I think we're reaching a little bit to try to describe them as having major deficiencies as a team. I mean, collectively, they're just really good, and they've got good size, don't you think? I mean, all over the floor.
Well, the big kid's a 7-footer. He didn't play much last year behind Sonoga,
right?
But man, when he played, blocking shots, active, skilled. I mean, he has skill. He's projected. He's going to be a first-round guy, and probably in the lottery if he goes. He's kind of expected to take over that middle, and you can see it. He's not probably a 28 and 14 type game, just because they have so many weapons. Added a kid from Rutgers, Castle. I think he played with Mulcahy, the UW kid, last year. Very good shooter. I think as complete a team as you're going to see. I watched him a lot against Kansas. Just right there with Kansas and Fog Allen the whole game. I think they ended up getting beat, but this team is. And last year we saw a team get hot at the right time and just kind of walk away. I mean, they won by double digits over everybody. It's like North Carolina's run back in 2009 with Hansbrough. So, what if you boil it down? What do you think are the biggest areas for Gonzaga to zero in on if they want to pull this off?
Well, I mean, what you have is way more depth up front. I mean, it's Klingon and Samson Johnson effectively up front. Yeah. Caravan can play the 4 a little bit like Watson. He's 6'8". He's more skilled than Anton, I think, from a 3-point line, but he's kind of a do-it-all forward. So they'll play him and Klingon together. But you've got more bodies up front, and presuming Huff can get going against a team like UConn, that's a lot of scoring punch. I don't know how you see it, but I'm to the point now where I think the 3 big lineup has to be a nightly thing for you, for GU. Forgive me if I'm not remembering correctly, but I don't remember at least long stretches, if any stretches, where Gonzaga went with 3 bigs against UW. I think they're at their best when they've got Greg out there with Watson and EK, and they got 2 of those 3, whether it be Stromer, Nemhard, and Hickman. I know it's a little different, but the size you can put out there, you can still go man-to-man defensively if you want to because of Watson's talent defensively, or you can go in the zone. And then offensively with Greg's ability to stretch you and Watson's improved, efficiency from three, you still have enough shooting, I think. And the reality is the ball is going to be in Nemhard or Hickman's hands the whole time anyway. So I think you just are much better rebounding the ball as well. So I think to me that's a key. I think they have to lean into that big lineup. And then it's just going to come down. I mean, defensively, you've got to be dialed in. This is a team in UConn that nearly every guy they put on the floor on the perimeter can play. They can shoot it, handle it. They're all good playmakers. Tristan Newton has been unbelievable this year. He's actually better on the road. He's averaging 17 on the year, but 20 on the road.
That's the head of the snake to me.
Yeah,
that's the head of the snake.
Yeah, he's averaging 44% from the 3-point line, and he's all at 6'5". Cam Spencer, the transfer from Rutgers, is 6'4", 200 pounds. Who can shoot it, and he's got a swagger to him. If you watch that Carolina game, I mean, just chirping, talking. I mean, he's not afraid of anybody. And Castle's their freshman, 6'6". He's been hurt. Super talented kid. Bad timing for GU in a way. You'd like to see him take another week off. It's hard to know exactly what he is, but when he plays, I mean, I talk about another guy who's going to be in the draft, just with his physical tools. So. Yeah, I mean, if you're Gonzaga, you've got the advantage inside. I think if you can be patient offensively, unlike what we saw against UW, particularly late in the game, and swing the ball, force UConn to defend you a little bit. I think you over the course of 40 minutes, you're going to have an advantage inside. You just have more depth. Now, Klingon is tough to score on, but if you go right at him, he's not Zach Edey as good as he is. He's a better prospect than Edey, but he's not Edey as far as his presence. And then defensively, I mean, you just got to get in the stance and you got to guard. The UConn just keeps coming at you. Yeah. And then if you go big, I think you're going to be able to compete with them on the glass. I mean, Gonzaga's better from a rebound margin perspective than UConn is, plus 14.5 is Gonzaga. This is going to be a game where I think the rebounding battle is going to be as important as ever. Rebounding battle, and I think doing something with Newton where he's not tearing you up is going to be the key. Well, let's move on to I gave this the worst name on the outline. I call it general topics, but I think it's one of our best things we do. We kind of touch on whatever is a hot button topic or even in college basketball circles. But the first one, in watching the game against UW, brought this to mind, brought it really into focus, that never ending debate on every team in any sport. Do you want the great balance? Do you want the 5 or 6 guys who can score 12, 18, maybe even 20 on a night? Tough to guard, tough to scout, all those things. Or do you want do you want Drew Timme, the alpha scorer, the guy you throw the ball to and he's probably going to put it in the hole about 70% of the time? And so you know who you're going to at crunch time. You've got a proven guy that can do it. That's kind of when it rears its head, crunch time. Who do you throw the ball to? Who do you isolate? What play do you run when you got to have a bucket and the score's tied, like we saw the other night, tight game? Obviously, both plus minuses to each way, and the Zags have done it each way. They haven't had Drew Timme every year. They haven't had Rui Hachimura hit a game winner against UW or Nigel go do his thing and create for everybody. This team is going to have to address that issue somewhere along the line, or at least game plan for it. How are they going to deal with these last minute situations? And I think maybe something you mentioned is what's going to happen. They're probably not going to. They'll run plays for, it might be Ryan, it might be the ball screen with EK and Ryan, even Anton. Obviously, with what he did against UCLA, he was superhuman. But I think they need to almost just stay within their offense. That's what didn't happen the other day. They got so rushed and rattled. It was one move, shot, one screen, boom, one hurried play. So what do you think they're going to do when it comes in the next crunch time, which could come Friday night? Well, look, academically, I prefer to have one guy
Yeah.
that I know can go get his own or create something for somebody else, but that's really difficult to find.
Yeah, superstars don't grow on trees, apparently.
Kind of a unicorn, and that's something you typically see in college basketball. I mean, the UConn's a great example in what we saw last year. I mean, they just had talent. I mean, their top 7 were all high-level college players. Yeah. And I think you're absolutely right. You have to trust your offense. If you run your offense and I've got 5 guys on the floor that can make a play, the ball's going to, and you share it, the ball's going to find the open guy. And I'm not sure I have more confidence if Ryan Nembhard shoots it versus Graham Ike or pick anybody else. Yeah. Right. But it's about the quality of the shot you get, and you get that through running your offense. And that, Gonzaga completely got away from that down the stretch against the Huskies. It was, a lot of one-on-one isolation, quick action, trying to force feed the ball. I mean, that turnover Hickman had trying to get the ball inside to Ike. I mean, Ike got his hand on the ball, but that's an impossible catch for just about anybody. That's just not the right play. You had time to do something else with the ball. So, I think for Gonzaga, that depth to me and the skill level you're able to put on the floor with all 5 guys is the way to go. Where the most likely the ball is going to be in either more than likely Ryan's hands, if not Hickman's, and it's going to be some sort of screen and roll action with either Ike or Watson, and you're going to have Greg, Stromer, whoever else on the weak side. And maybe or maybe not, you have some secondary action, but you have shooters on that side of the floor, and then you just go make a play, make the right play, the simple play. That's kind of where college basketball is now. I mean, I'm hard pressed to think of a dominant perimeter player in college today that functions in the way this is not the NBA, where the game is more spread out. Everything. There's a ton of isolation basketball. The offensive talent is through the roof. Mm-hmm. You kind of have to do it collectively, and I think Gonzaga has the pieces to do it. They just have to take their time and trust in their offense. And when they do trust their offense, they score. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't think it's a complicated question.
Yeah, that's basically do what you're doing the first 30 minutes of that game. They ran their offense. Right. They scored like crazy. They got in transition. They forced turnover and score. They hit threes in their pattern offense or their set offense. And, Ike got his buckets. Anton finished with 13. It's gonna be a committee approach, I think. And that's probably a lot of discussions, I imagine, though, in those coaching circles of Exon and Owen. But I think they kind of do what they have done to this point for the majority of the offensive sets. Got to stay with it.
Right.
That's going to wrap it up. I did just catch the poll. It looks like the Zags dropped to number 10, 3 spots. So they're still in the top 10 going into a week where they could make a big move up or fall even further with the UConn game coming up. As always, we appreciate everybody tuning in. Foxy, good stuff. We'll see you tonight. And every Monday, tell everybody to come catch us on the Zags Basketball Insiders Podcast. Have a good one.